really quite beautiful. I mean, again, this is all just sort of being, made up as they went. But Louis just had this idea that, what men wanted deeply to receive from other men was this level of blessing. Again, the initiation was part of that. That's part of the warrior thing. But after going through this shamanic West, to actually step together into a sacred space and sort of claiming as, each man having the potential to give the same gift, to give and receive the king's blessing. So, Louis just was the way shower, the leader, but the whole idea is that each man would experience giving and receiving this blessing from the other men. So it was I remember when that happened, because again, I'm guiding Louis through this whole thing. And I remember this was probably the second time, the first time being member back at Hope Church, Louis giving testimony about, the King, the Christ energy. This was probably the second time where Louis had this total unification experience with me, okay, his higher self, Sun King, and, realizing that, like, this is it. This is as good as it gets. This is the full achievement, if you want to call it that. It's not really an achievement, but this total expression of oneness, of beauty, of power, of love. Again, this energetic expression. This is, again, what Louis was called to do, what everyone is called to do, is to open themselves to being the portal through which this powerful, energetic principle expresses itself in the space-time world. Louis, in this moment in 1999, with a group of men doing this thing called the King's Blessing, he experienced it big time. So he'd done it before, sort of, in more of a context of Christianity, church, God, and Jesus, and all that. Now, okay, he's bringing it down to a level of, here we are, just men, just a group of brothers, and we can have the same experience with each other because, again, we are that. It's not this rarefied Christian thing. It's just men, brothers, loving each other, expressing appreciation, gratitude, enthusiasm. This very, very high level of energetic expression with each other. All right. So part of the completion piece for Louis in this, doing this a number of years, he would do it. He was in an I group, integration group, with two men, Paul and Mark, two brothers that had been through the initiation in 1991, a year after Louis. And so they, in 1991, started this group together where they met monthly, the three of them. And this went on for 15 years. And so at the end, because Louis knew he was going to be moving on, so he orchestrated a couple experiences, one with his dad in 2005, then with his two warrior brothers, the I group, in 2006, before he would begin his journey away from Minnesota and eventually away from the USA to find the new life, the new oasis. But very significant, one of the things that I wanted to mention as part of this story about Montana is that in 2002, near the end of his years of participating in this with groups of men, Louis went out with a small group, and actually it was interesting that Jack, one of the men that was it was the shaman partner with Louis doing the king, and Jack would do the shamanic work with the sweat lodge and all. this year, Jack decided to bring his son with him. So another man, Jack, his son, and myself, or Louis. And in this particular trip, Louis was going to guide the men on this kind of radical hike up this other face we'd never been before. And on this particular morning, maybe it was because of Jack's son, just some of the dynamic going on, the men weren't ready on time, and Louis just decided to go off on his own. And I remember Louis had started to bring guns out with him, not because of the bear danger. Actually, it's because the locals, sometimes Louis would encounter when he was alone in the camp, the other men off doing their solos. A couple guys would come up, whether they're fishing or hunting or whatever, but they always had, in Montana, was then, I'm sure still is, common for men to just carry, if they're out in the wilderness, carry pistols on their belt, And so it became apparent to Louis that it would be wise for him to have a handgun, as well as he actually had a street sweeper sawed-off shotgun as well. But he would have the gun, in a holster on his side for self-protection and to protect the camp. Because as I say, they're in a remote spot. If somebody decided they wanted to come in and kill the group and take the car, take the equipment, take whatever, it would be pretty easy to do it. Anyway, this particular day, Louis in kind of gets himself in a little bit of an egoic fit, and he goes off on his own on this hike. And I remember having the gun because he just, once he got up in the high country, it was fun. It was the 357. It was fun to do a little target practice. But there were bear and grizzly bear, in the area. In fact, on this particular hike, we remember seeing a very, very fresh, steamy chunk of bear poop. So he knew that a bear was nearby. Anyway, the point of the story was Louis got very, just overdid it. He, wanted to sort of prove, and this is again an egoic trap to get into, that, being a leader, you want to keep the mindset of being the servant king, not I'm the authority, I'm the boss, But this particular day, Louis got off balance, and the result of it, he got himself way overextended. He went way too far. The other men eventually found him, and coming back out, they took, not necessarily a wrong turn because it was all wilderness. Really, there's no trail, there's no path, but took the long way out, and it ended up being probably about, gosh, I don't know, maybe 20 miles of hiking altogether, and just too much. So Louis was exhausted, and we finally got back to camp and laid down for a while, and then got up, and he had this very, very powerful experience that seemed very much like a heart attack. And, he had acid reflux in the past. This seemed a little different. Anyway, he ended up talking with Jack about it. It seemed likely that he was going to need help, having Jack take him down the mountain. And Jack did that. They got down the mountain, and there's a clinic, the paramedics. They did an assessment, which was heart attack, and took Louis via ambulance to the hospital in Billings. They did more tests. It's a very major heart attack, and called Louis's wife. She flew out, I think maybe a day there, and then flew back to Minnesota. Louis entrusted Jack and the other men to bring back the truck and all the equipment. Back in Minnesota, Louis went for further testing, and they had him all wired up and doing a stress test. And Louis performing admirably, and the doctor eventually said, all right, show off. You have a heart of a 23-year-old. Louis 50 at the time. You didn't have a heart attack. There's no damage in your arteries at all. And so that's that, misdiagnosis of heart attack. He said that his interpretation was just because of exhaustion, severe exhaustion, the body would have the same enzymes in it as if he had a heart attack. So this was, again, one of those stories where evidence that as Louis is being challenged to become the full empty vessel that he could be, to allow me to use him as the communication device that was his destiny, he would face certain challenges. The India, the near-death experience in his 30s, the car crash that should have killed him. And so part of what we are experiencing, he and I, me guiding him through this whole thing, is evidence to show that, there's no sort of easy way out. It would seem as if, death would have been an escape from his destiny, but there wasn't to be an escape. And here, I'm evidence now today, this is almost 20 years later, that there's no way that Louis' body, Louis' person, was going to be allowed to die. Okay, so a big part of the story is, part of this king training and king experience was to realize for Louis to eventually realize that you're not the king. Okay? You have a role to play in the Sun King's expression, but it's not you. Okay, so knock it off. Just become the vessel, become empty, become invisible, become nothing. Okay, you could say in a way that the body and the person of Louis was being killed over and over again, but in the end, not really killed, just put in its place. Okay, of yourself, you are nothing. I am. Okay, I am the energetic principle that's going to use you. And because of that, your body and your person are being protected. It's safe. It's not going to die. It's not going to be destroyed, because it simply has a purpose as a communication device, nothing more. Okay, so again, Louis was devastated in India. This was not nearly as devastating as India, but it was a reminder. Okay, it was just a reminder. It was part of this training. Okay, it's not you. Don't take it too seriously. Don't take on too much. Don't think it's like a burden, like a heavy responsibility. Oh my God, this is, because that's what kills men, right? With strokes and heart attacks, is like overburdened, too much responsibility, taking themselves too seriously, being, okay, to truly be the servant king would be to relax, to allow. This is again why Louis developing the divine feminine. This is what's going to eventually lead the way for Louis truly to enter this holy space of the Sun King, is because his feminine would allow him to fully surrender and just relax, enjoy. Okay, this is not an ordeal. Not now, not today. Louis not done yet with his development, but we're getting close. We're getting close to the end, okay? Blessings to you. Thanks for your patience and listening to these long stories, but it all has a point. I love you so much.